Australia won't stop Taiwan ally Tuvalu if it makes China pivot. The Pentagon has no more money for Ukraine. World's first malaria vaccine program for children starts in Cameroon. US-UK stage multiple airstrikes against Iran-backed Houthi militants. UN Migration Agency seeks $7.9 billion to help people on the move. NASA unveils new supersonic plane X-59.
Hello, I'm Johnny. Thank you for joining us on Funday News. It's Wednesday, January 24th, and here are your top stories. Australia won't interfere in any moves by the Pacific nation of Tuvalu to end its diplomatic relationship with Taiwan, Foreign Minister Penny Wong said, following media reports that it could follow Nauru's lead in shifting its alliance to China. Tuvalu's foreign policy is a matter for the Pacific nation alone, Wong said at a press conference in Canberra on Tuesday. Any decision on its recognition of either Taiwan or China is not something we would be intervening in, Wong said. It's a sovereign decision for Tuvalu just as it is a sovereign decision for us.
This after the Tuvaluan ambassador told media that his country could follow its neighbor Nauru and ditch Taipei in favor of Beijing.
Her comments come after a historic agreement with Tuvalu in November, which gave Australia greater say in the Pacific nation's defense and security decisions in return for enabling better migration access for Tuvalu's citizens. There are now only 3 Pacific nations, including Tuvalu, which maintain diplomatic relations with Taiwan, following Nauru's decision earlier in January to cut ties and recognize China. The 2 others are Palau and the Marshall Islands. For decades, the Chinese government has been whittling away at Taiwan's diplomatic partners around the world, attempting to isolate the democratically governed island which it views as part of its territory.
For the first time since Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin established the international group to support Ukraine in April 2022, the United States will host a monthly gathering of about 50 countries out of money, unable to send the ammunition and missiles that Ukraine needs to fend off Russia. While waiting for Congress to pass a budget and potentially approve more money for Ukraine's fight, the U.S. will be looking to allies to keep bridging the gap. The Pentagon announced its last security assistance for Ukraine on December 27th, a $250 million package that included 155mm rounds, Stinger anti-aircraft missiles, and other high-demand items drawn from existing U.S. stockpiles.
The U.S. has not been able to provide additional munitions since then because the money for replenishing those stockpiles has run out and Congress has yet to approve more funds. More than $110 billion in aid for both Ukraine and Israel is stalled over disagreements between Congress and the White House over other policy priorities, including additional security for the U.S.-Mexico border. Meanwhile, Russia has shown no willingness to end its conflict in Ukraine, and on Monday the United Nations ruled out any peace plan backed by Kyiv and the West. The U.S. has provided Ukraine with more than $44.2 billion in security assistance since Russia invaded in February 2022. About $23.6 billion of that was pulled from existing military stockpiles, and almost $19 billion was sent in the form of longer-term military contracts for items that will take months to procure.
Cameroon will be the first country to routinely give children a new malaria vaccine as the shots are rolled out in Africa. The campaign, due to start Monday, was described by officials as a milestone in the decades-long effort to curb the mosquito spread disease on the continent, which accounts for 95% of the world's malaria deaths. In Africa, there are about 250 million cases of parasitic disease each year, including 600,000 deaths, mostly in young children. The Central African nation hopes to vaccinate about 250,000 children this year and next year.
Cameroon has become the first country to roll out a new malaria vaccine.
Cameroon will use the first of 2 recently approved malaria vaccines, known as Airstrikes. The World Health Organization endorsed the vaccine 2 years ago, acknowledging that even though it is imperfect, its use would still dramatically reduce severe infections and hospitalizations. The GlaxoSmithKline-produced shot is only about 30% effective, requires 4 doses, and protection begins to fade after several months. The vaccine was tested in Africa and used in pilot programs in 3 countries. Neither of the malaria vaccines stops transmission, so other tools like bed nets and insecticidal spraying will still be critical. The malaria parasite mostly spreads to people via infected mosquitoes and can cause symptoms including fever, headaches, and chills.
The U.S. and U.K. on Monday staged airstrikes against 8 targets in Yemen aimed at stopping Iran-backed Houthi militants from attacking ships in the Red Sea. The White House has insisted the retaliatory airstrikes, 7 rounds so far, have been effective despite repeated Houthi attacks. A joint statement released by the nations involved in Monday's airstrikes said, "Today, the militaries of the United States and United Kingdom, at the discretion of their respective governments with support from Australia, Bahrain, Canada, and the Netherlands, conducted an additional round of proportionate and necessary strikes against 8 Houthi targets in Yemen in response to the Houthis' continued attacks against international and commercial shipping, as well as naval vessels transiting the Red Sea."
The statement made clear that the countries involved in Monday's strikes remain focused on de-escalating tensions and restoring stability to the region, but warned that we will not hesitate to defend lives and the free flow of commerce in one of the world's most critical waterways. Monday's joint airstrike with the United Kingdom was similar to the first night of airstrikes on January 11 that targeted 28 Houthi locations associated with the Houthi attacks on commercial shipping lanes in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. Since then, the U.S. has carried out 5 smaller-scale airstrikes targeting Houthi missile sites that were being prepared for imminent launches to target commercial vessels or U.S. Navy ships.
The UN's migration agency is launching its first global appeal, seeking $7.9 billion to help people on the move and ensure smoother pathways to migration. At a time when the fallout from climate change, conflict, and both economic distress and opportunities has caused millions to leave their homes. The annual appeal from the International Organization for Migration puts the Geneva-based agency more in the hunt for aid funds, along with other UN agencies and humanitarian groups. At a time when many top donor governments face tight budgets or are reducing aid outlays. IOM says it hopes funding for its appeal will come from individual and private sector donors in addition to governments.
The UN humanitarian aid chief, Martin Griffiths, last month decried a severe and ominous funding crisis and said the overall $57 billion appeal from his UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs last year was only about 1/3 funded, making it the worst funding shortfall in years. His agency is seeking $46 billion this year. It's part of a 5-year strategic plan under IOM's new Director General, Amy Pope, and would benefit 140 million people, both migrants and the communities that take them in. The agency plays up the promise of migration, reporting that some 281 million international migrants, ranging from manual laborers to white-collar job holders, generate nearly 10% of global economic output.
NASA and U.S. defense company Lockheed Martin have unveiled their acquired supersonic aircraft after 6 years of development. Supersonic flights are flights that can travel at speeds faster than the speed of sound, and the X-59 is designed to fly at 1.4 times the speed of sound, or around 1,480 kilometers per hour. X-59 is 30 meters long and 9 meters wide and has a thin, tapered nose, which accounts for almost a third of its length. NASA says the pointed nose will help break up the shock waves that normally result in a sonic boom, a sound similar to an explosion or a thunderclap to the human ear, caused by an object traveling through the air faster than the speed of sound.
NASA launched the Quest mission in 2018 to develop a supersonic aircraft that generates less noise than a conventional supersonic aircraft. For 50 years, the U.S. and other countries have banned such flights because of the loud noise. It is hoped that the mission will yield data to help U.S. lawmakers reconsider the ban on flight over land. NASA says, if it becomes possible to fly commercial supersonic aircraft, travel time will be dramatically reduced. NASA's Deputy Administrator, Pam Melroy said, This breakthrough really redefines the feasibility of commercial supersonic travel over land. It brings us closer to a future that we can all understand, cutting flight time from New York to Los Angeles in half.
The answer for yesterday was A, steep. San Francisco is built on 40 hills and some are very steep. Did you answer correctly? Now let's delve into the news of NASA unveils new supersonic plane X-59. Number 1. Unveil, 首次展示，推出，公之于众. They will be unveiling their new models at the motor show. Number 2. Taper, 使一端逐渐变细. Unlike other trees, it doesn't taper very much. It stays fat all the way up. Number 3. Breakthrough, 重大进展，突破. The company looks poised to make a significant breakthrough in China. Next, we have a multiple choice question for everyone to practice. Which answer would you choose? You can write your answer in the comments section. The correct answer will be announced tomorrow. And that's all for today's Funday News. Be sure to tune into Funday News from Monday to Friday and click the link below to join Funday for free. I'm Johnny Wu, your host. I'll see you next time.